Oh, you're fine. Was it Dad? You're not going to grab me out.
What I did, I just tried it again. It worked.
It was. Well, that's really it.
It is.
And I didn't have to see. I can't see over the. I can't see the audience unless I go. Well, we need to sort that out. Here. That's why I'm going to steal me a thing. Yeah, steal me a chair.
Sean has an extra card.
I'm live now.
Twitch.
Thank you.
We don't have that going on here yet.
I don't see him now.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome Pastor Leonard Akers with Liberty United Methodist Church to give our invocation tonight. Welcome, Pastor Akers.
Thank you. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the gift and the blessing that you have placed us in this community at this time. We're grateful beyond words to be able to call Canton our home. I pray, Lord, over the people that will present and speak tonight. I pray that you would give them a great sense of clarity, a great sense of peace so that they might present and say what they need to say and do that well. I pray for our council and leadership that you would give them the ability to hear and receive well tonight what folks have to say. And I pray, Lord, if it be possible that our council and leadership would be, as much as it is possible, unified and together. And I pray in those moments when they are not, that you would give them great patience. Pray that they would hear and receive well all that they need to hear and receive well for the sake of all of our citizens. And whenever possible, Lord, I pray that you would give them the courage to live that out with their actions for this community. But we thank you again, Lord, for this night. We're so grateful again to be able to call Canton home. Thank you. Pray all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Akers. Call our September 1st, 2022 meeting to order. I'll consider approval of tonight's agenda. Does anyone have any changes, additions, motions?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion approved, a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members vote for the motions. Tonight, guests and visitors, we have one presentation from our Environmental and Sustainability Advisory Board. Updates from Mr. Jared Toich, sorry. Jared, thank you. Sorry I screwed that up. I had two people tell me how to pronounce it, and of course...
You did fine. You did fine. Thanks for having me. I didn't know I was giving a presentation. I thought maybe I was just coming in to talk and update everybody, but I didn't bring a PowerPoint.
Let's be more casual about it. Let's talk, so thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Jared Toich. I am the chairman of the Sustainability Board, and just wanted to come in and take a few minutes to update you all. We have been meeting, and we've actually been meeting in almost a year now in what I would call a methodical process to pretty much understand where the city is at and where we'd like to go. And so we're trying to understand in terms of land use, in terms of water use, recycling, energy, basically all things environment and sustainability. And of course, we've had one event. We had an Earth Day event this year that I thought was pretty successful. We had a lot of people turn out for that. Gave out a lot of native plants and some trees, which was good to see. So people, I think, another reason they like to call Canton home. So as we'll continue to do that. You know, we're moving forward with trying to get Canton as a bee city designation as well as a tree city designation. So we'll continue to do that. Kelly Penley has been awesome. So I want you to know that well, that the staff here, you know, we're only as good as the staff, and the staff are great. And so big thanks to her and all the other staff that have actually been coming in monthly to us to kind of update us and inform us about different departments and what they're doing, because it helps us do our job and serve you and make the recommendations that we need to make as a board serving the city of Canton. Also want to update you a little bit on, we have an event October 15th. We're looking forward to that. It's the last day of the farmers market. We're going to piggyback on that, have an opportunity for citizens to come out. We really want to hear from citizens in Canton to tell us what they're worried about from an environment and sustainability standpoint. So we're looking forward to that, to bring people out, celebrate kind of the last day of the farmers market, and tell us a little bit what we hope to hear in terms of all the things I listed out. We all know recycling will be probably on top of mind, but hopefully there are other things too, such as energy use and some opportunities to continue to be more sustainable in the city. So I think that's it. That's all I wanted to do. Happy to take any questions if anybody has any, or let you continue to move on in the agenda.
Questions for Mr. Deutsch? Awesome. Well, thank you for the update. We appreciate the work you and the committee is doing, so we look forward to your continued good work. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank
Thanks
you.
for joining us. Thank you. We have one public hearing this evening, and it's public hearing and discussion of cases MPA 2205-001. Before we begin, I know we have some people join us, may have not been to a council meeting before. We're going to have our city manager please review the rules and process for us before we get started with the public hearing, before I announce it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for attending tonight's public hearing. We have two cases tonight. They're concurrent. Cases MPA 2205-001 and CUP 2205-002. These hearings are recorded verbatim and become part of the legal record for the cases being discussed. As such, you're required to sign up and fill out an affidavit to speak during the public hearing process. The public hearing was advertised in the legal organ, noticed to neighboring property owners under the Development Code via mail, and noticed to the public at large via yellow public notice signs on the property that are part of the case. The hearing will begin with a declaration of the mayor to open the public hearing, including the case number, description of the case, and a summary by our staff of the case. Those wishing to speak in favor of the applicant, including the applicant, will be given the first opportunity to speak. They will have 10 minutes in total to speak on behalf of their position. Those in opposition will then be given a total of 10 minutes to speak on behalf of their position. Those in support may reserve time to rebut or comment on any of the opposition statements. Once all parties have spoken or the total time for each side has expired, the mayor will call close the public hearing. At that time, the city council will be free to discuss the case and ask questions to staff about the case. In the interest of all parties and to give fairness to both sides, a timekeeper will be assigned to track the 10 minutes for each side. That'll be me. As there may be several speakers, we ask that you keep your comments concise and try not to duplicate the comments of other speakers. Please give your name and address for the record before you start your comments. Please address your comments to the council. The audience is asked to maintain decorum. Those that cannot adhere to the guidelines may be called out of order by the mayor and escorted from the meeting. The hearing process is a monologue. Council addresses comments after the case has ended.
Thank you, Mr. Peppers. So our public hearing and discussion of cases MPA 2205-001 and CUP 2205-002 Master Plan Amendment to add residential as an approved use in Pod J of the Riverstone development, and conditional use permit approval to construct a 181-unit townhome development on 40.7.4 acres. Mr. Green.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, you have pretty well summarized what this applications are about. The public hearing was originally scheduled for last month. Due to the change in the economy and of the cost of building materials, the applicant has amended his letter of intent to go from a fee simple owner-occupied development to an all-rental community. This being noted, the Mayor and Council asked that the public hearing be deferred for a month to give them a chance to update their letter of intent and their site plan if possible. Also, during the last public hearing, or just prior to, the applicant was informed that he did not have to stick to a 24-foot wide townhome unit. He was under the impression that was all he could build. He has since revised his plans, and he is now showing 16, 20, and 24-foot wide units as an option. Again, these will be a rental, and the units have increased by 9, going from 172 to 181. I have not received any comments from any abutting property owners or anyone that received a letter within the 1,000-foot radius. There, however, was one property owner that was in attendance last month that was going to speak on the applications. I do not know if he is here tonight, but other than that, I have not had any contact from anyone concerning these applications.
Thank you, Mr. Green. So this time we'll open up the public hearing. We actually had no one sign up to speak on the public hearing after, but thank you, Mr. Peppers, for reading the rules of conduct for future reference. But at this point, we'll ask the applicant to come and present the case.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I'm Benson Chambers on behalf of Front Door Communities. Riverstone Parkway hasn't always been there. Neither has Reinhardt College Parkway or Bluffs Parkway. When I was growing up in Canton, to get to Ball Ground, you went north on Highway 5, and once you passed by the mill lofts, there was nothing. 500 acres of trees, until you got to about where the intersection of Highway 20, the 20 intersection is, and there was a place there called Nicky's. I was too young to know about Nicky's. Nicky's was a club where the rumor was, if you remember, you could get beer there, which was a big thing in a dry county and a dry city. But in 1995, a man named Scott Hudgens was in my office. Mr. Hudgens, well known in the Atlanta area. He developed such things as Gwinnett Place Mall, Town Center Mall, also the Mall of Georgia. He donated the land for the reservoir. He donated the land for the Georgia National Cemetery. And I consider him the father of Riverstone Parkway. Because while he was in my office, he said, I'm ready to get this started. Can I use your phone? Sure. So he picked up the phone, he dialed. There were punch dials then, you know. He dialed and he said, Tom. Turns out Tom was Tom Moreland, the commissioner of the Georgia Department of Transportation. And the words out of his mouth were this: Tom, when can you come move a highway so I can build a shopping center? The next thing I heard him say was, thank you, Tom. As soon as possible, we'll be fine. Soon after that phone call, Bright Sasser came in and bought the 500 acres of woods and began to develop what we know as the Riverstone area. They submitted a master plan for that 500 acres. And included in that master plan was the reservoir, which, by the way, took 10 years just to get a permit for. Residential, commercial, new roads, offices, and other uses. Over this time period, certain designated areas never came to fruition. If you go up Bluffs Parkway, there's a big monument sign that says Bluffs Technology Park. Never happened. A lot of things have changed in the last 25 years. Now, there are new things and different things there. Government buildings, schools, soon to be the new Cherokee High School sites there. The property before you tonight is on the master plan for offices. It's been on the market now for 25 years. This is the first opportunity for a contract for residential. But a map amendment, perhaps 25 years on the market, if there had been this technology park, maybe it would make sense. But today's world, it does not make sense to have offices at this particular location. In fact, it's right in front of the dam for the reservoir. I want to take an opportunity to introduce you to Sonia Linton. She's the planner in this case, and she's going to provide you some technical information, and if I have time, I'll wrap it up. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sonia Linton. I'm with Planners and Engineers Collaborative. That's 350 Research Court, Georgia. So, as he was kind enough to introduce, this site is currently located on about 40 acres of land, the subject property. There's commercial to the east of it, commercial to the west of it, with some residential to the south. We also have Cherokee County, which is bordering in between 575 to the eastern portion of it, and we have an easement that runs through for it. So as you can see here, this is taken from your zoning map. This is in the planned development mixed-use area, so this does form to the character area, and as it was previously mentioned, we are just looking to add in the residential land use to what is already zoned for commercial and office use. Following that, also we have the future land use map just to show the areas around it type of thing. Based on the type of residential development within kind of a mixed-use corridor area, townhomes are quite useful based on the live-work accessibility to the area, and also decreasing time travel for residents. So this is a site plan. I know it's a little small up there, but what we have currently is about 5 dwelling units to the acre in Tract A, which is to the north or to your left-hand side, and 3.7 dwelling units to the right, which is in the south portion of it. Running through it, we have Hickory Log Creek with a large floodplain through it. Based on the topography of the land, it is quite steep, and speaking with our engineering department, we have come up with a site design that we think will be most feasible to it. As previously mentioned, we have located 16-foot wide townhomes in Tract A, which once again is to the left. Based on that too, we have also put the amenity area in there, and with previous conversation with staff and city council members, we have a proposed sidewalk to run the length of the property to connect the 2 entrances, along with a 5-foot mulch trail as well for connection purposes. And this is also a rendering of the site just to show what it could look like, the amount of green space that will be left open. Currently, as it stands calculated, we have about 15% of the site is going to be impervious surfacing ways that will be there. Most of it is going to be left in its natural vegetated state just because of the topo on the land that we can't particularly touch. We would also like to point out that along Bluffs Parkway, cars that will be traveling along there is a 50-foot landscape buffer there. And we do not anticipate the townhomes, after we do the cut and the fill of the grading, to be visible from the right-of-way. There would also be landscaping on site to buffer the homes from any type of noise they might experience. Followed by that, we do also have elevations that have been provided by our client, and this is the product we would like to present to you. Thank you.
This morning, like most mornings, I took my cup of coffee and sat down to read the paper on the internet, of course. And I came across an article that was kind of timely. The article was printed in USA Today, and the name or the title of the article was Government Imposed Homelessness. Interesting, so I read it. And basically the article was about government regulations that require certain kind of housing that now has become priced out of the market for a lot of working families. There's a shortage here in Cherokee, in Canton, for affordable housing. We are going through a time period just in the last couple of months where we've seen housing for sale and sold at prices above their listing price. But also in the last couple of months, we've seen contracts fall through because people had lost their mortgage ability to qualify. Even though they're working and they're making more money, they're spending more money. If you're on Facebook, you may be familiar with a group called Cherokee Connect. It's a place where people go to ask questions, to get information, etc. And several times I have seen 3 or 4 different posts from what appear to be desperate people. I need a place to live. I've got to have a place in 2 months. I can pay up to $2,000 a month. Can anyone help me find something that I can afford? That's right here in our community. When I look at a residence, I cannot tell if the occupant of that residence owns it or rents it. At the end of the day, the only thing that's really important is that everyone has an affordable place to live. This project will provide that. The project makes a good, viable use of a very difficult piece of property. And it will provide a good option for those who may otherwise find themselves homeless. Thank you.
Yeah, no one else, again, sign up to speak either in support or opposition of the project, so we will call the public hearing to a close and open it up for discussion among council. Comments, questions for Mr. Green?
I do have 2 questions, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Stone.
Mr. Green, could you find out, the gentleman that was just up mentioned the affordability, and so I would like to gain a better understanding of what that definition means to them, and if they have a guesstimate in terms of price points for these rentals. Love to get that shared with us when you have the ability to get that information. And then secondly, when we originally saw the presentation, there's clearly 2 segments of this property, and I thought I heard that there was going to be a footbridge or some kind of bridge connecting the 2. I'm not sure I heard that tonight, so I'd love some clarity on that as well.
Ms. McGrew?
Thank you. Mr. Green, would you find out for us, please, how many units will be 16 feet wide, 20, and 24? And may I assume that the 16-foot wide units would be 1 bedroom? And what amenities will this development offer? Are there approvals for curb cuts for the multiple ingress, egress? And that's all I have right now. Thank you.
And a question, Mr. Green, on I believe you mentioned the trail being proposed as a 5-foot wide mulch trail. And according to the last plan I saw, it looked like it was coming out from track A to the parkway, but not actually. It looks like it came from track A to the parkway, out to the parkway sidewalk. But it looks like the residents would have to go from the second tract to the public sidewalk and then connect to the amenities on a mulch trail. I just want to confirm if that's the case. It doesn't seem to be ideal if they would have to kind of walk to the amenities on the mulch trail, but.
All right.
Ms. Wilson?
It seems that I remember when this was first brought to us, the residences were for sale, not for rent.
That's correct.
So now are all these residences for rent? And do we know why they changed from fee simple for sale to for rent? Do they still have any for sale?
In their letter of intent, they state that it will be a rental community. After submission of the application, I think in May, the interest rates changed, by the feds. Building material costs continued to escalate. And in meeting with the applicant, he'd stated that the price points that they would have to sell these at, he did not feel would be sellable. So they have changed it to an all-rental community. But I can certainly confirm that with him for you.
That's okay. I that's what I thought, but I just remembered that they were for sale at fee simple for sale before.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Carlin?
Mr. Green, if I understood it right, in looking at the site plan on the right-hand side, we have a big square. It's not a part of this project. It's marked for out parcel commercial. Is that owned by the county currently? Or who currently owns that? And do we know what he planned for that development?
I do not know who currently owns it, but I can certainly find that out for you.
Thank you. And then my only other question is it looks like we have one way into the right-hand side and one way into the left-hand side. I'm sure you can make, right there on Bluffs Parkway, is there a median between that separates lanes going each way? Or we have to do any other road work to Bluffs Parkway to make it so that everybody can get in and out? I'm sure we're not going to have everybody just come from one side, but just knowing what kind of infrastructure work we need to do right there, if any.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Green, I know Mr. Tolan inquired about the rental prices for the units for the townhomes, and I know Mr. Chambers mentioned affordable housing. When you do confirm the rental prices and the price points, would you just confirm how they compare to the city's definition of affordable housing and the AMI and see if match up? Can you report back to us, please? Any further questions or comments at this time? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Green. We'll move forward with our business agenda now with a consideration to approve the minutes. You have in your packet the draft minutes for our August 18th meeting. Any changes, revisions, or motions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion to approve and a second. Any further comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion. We have two informational items this evening. These are just for information only. Technical reports from staff. Item A is on case CUP 2207-004, Misty Way and Misty Court. Request for approval of a 296-unit apartment complex. Mr. Green.
Well, Mr. Mayor, as you just stated, this is a second request for a conditional use permit on this property. About 3 months ago, it was denied without prejudice, which allowed them to resubmit the application without having to wait the 12-month time frame. Obviously, they have resubmitted. They have obtained an emergency ingress-egress easement from the school board to use the adjacent property. That's reflected on their site plan. They are showing a single means of ingress-egress on Highway 20, Knoxbridge Highway, and they have submitted, and I have received a email from a GDOT that they have approved their concept, not their actual permit, but the way they have designed it, a GDOT does not have an issue. Of course, that will only come to light if the CUP is approved, and at the time they would apply for land disturbance permits.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And this application is scheduled for public hearing on October the 6th, and then for possible final action October the 20th. if everything goes according to the normal schedule.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Green. Our second informational item is item B, review of July 2022 financials. Ms. Forrester, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
I just wanted to touch on a few issues in related to the July financials. And I was unaware of the other agenda items when I put this information together, so it all fits with a theme here. But I wanted to start with the revenues, and we received our second package store alcohol license and our second tranche of ARPA funding in the month of July. And regards to building permits and plan review fees, these are significantly lower than anticipated in the current year. Building permit fees, as of this evening, are only at 64% of budgeted revenues. Plan review fees are only at 50% of budgeted revenues. Activity is in line with next year's budget because we had built that into the plan, but I just wanted to point that out to you tonight when we're talking about all this additional development. With housing projects taking longer than expected to complete, our water and sewer tap fees are also below budgeted projections in the current year. Part of this has to do with developers being overly aggressive with their timelines, and some of this has to do with supply chain issues, delivery delays, labor shortages, canceled contracts, and all the items mentioned in the presentation earlier with increasing interest rates. While housing initiatives are slower than expected, plenty of construction is active in the month of July. You might see in your local developments 34 new townhomes underway at the Bluffs, 10 new townhomes under construction in Rivergreen, and 4 more units permitted in Great Sky just during the month of July. I'm here to answer any questions on the financials if you had any.
Thank you, Ms. Forrester. Any questions for Ms. Forrester? Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. A few quick announcements this evening. Last week, the Georgia Downtown Association held their annual downtown conference, and City of Canton brought home some bling. Did want to congratulate the Mill on Etowah, who received the Best Adaptive Reuse Project in the entire state of Georgia. So we wanted to thank the Mill on Etowah, congratulate Mill on Etowah, Mr. Penn Hodge, Mr. Grant Schmilk. I want to thank Councilor Schmidt, who went down and accepted the presentation along with the city manager and our downtown development manager, Belinda Hardy, who was on present for that. And also exciting news that City of Canton came home and was awarded. We will be hosting the downtown conference for 2023 in our downtown. So that's exciting news. So we'll be welcoming everyone from other Georgia downtowns in our downtown and in the city of Canton next year for the conference. So exciting news. So also wanted to just remind everyone that tomorrow at 4 p.m. we will be holding our groundbreaking celebrations to celebrate the renovations to Harmon Park, which will begin to start our mini pitch soccer field with stadium seating. And again, thank Mr. Tolan and all the work he did on that and getting that initiative going. There'll be new basketball courts, sidewalks, a new pavilion, expanded parking, and lots of other great improvements to Harmon Park, our oldest park in the city. So if you can join us at 4 p.m. in Harmon Park, please do. It's going to be an exciting day to celebrate the great things coming to Harmon Park. So please join us for that. So any other announcements? Ms. Schmidt.
I just wanted to say, I don't think it made it to a meeting yet, but the Canton Cultural Arts Commission and the Canton Tourism Board have approved and are moving forward with an arts master plan for the city.
Great news, exciting. So,
Mr. Mayor, you may want to note the Multicultural Festival on the 10th also.
Yes, Multicultural Festival on Saturday, September 10th, beginning at 8 and going until 3 p.m. In Etowah River Park. It's going to be great. and a lot of fun, music and food, and lots of celebration. 5K run, soccer tournament. So please join us for a great day there. So, any other? There's lots more things going on. So check your emails and newsletters and online social media posts and city website for all the things that are going on. So let me see. So now we have our 10-minute public input session. And once again, I'm going to ask our city manager to review the process for that.
Thank you for your interest in providing public input to the city. During this time, we ask that you address your comments to the city council. Only those that have signed up prior to the meeting for public input will be allowed to speak. The mayor will call your name. There is a total of 10 minutes allotted for public input. We ask that you keep your comments concise and non-repetitive to other speakers. Please address your remarks to the council. And again, similar to the public hearing, it's a monologue and not a dialogue.
Thank you. And we do have 7 residents signed up this evening. Again, in 10 minutes, you tally that up. It leaves about a minute and a half for each, so keep that in mind. If for some reason everyone doesn't get to speak, again, please forward your comments to mayor, council, city staff. We're always welcome to hear your input. And I was told that the citizens got together and gave me the order and preference of how they wanted to speak. So if you didn't, you can take that up with each other. But so we'll start out with Miss Susan Stanton.
Susan Stanton, 430 Cherokee Street. This is going to be a little off the wall, but bear with me. And I see you have on your agenda tonight an ordinance to prohibit the release of Mylar balloons, and that's a wonderful thing. The city has a little problem enforcing its ordinances, though, so please get the word out. Otherwise, it'll just be a token statement. My interest in that, though, is that the prohibiting Mylar balloons is to protect the environment and wildlife. My concern is with wildlife. I live at 430 Cherokee Street. It's uphill to the top of a hill all the way. And we have deer, lots of deer. I had 8 in my yard one time a few months ago. I had a doe and a fawn 2 weeks ago. Last week I looked up and there's a deer about 10 feet from my front door. They munch on my acorns in the winter and my hosta in the summer. But these deer, all these deer live somewhere. And if you look, there's only one real place they can live. That's in 33.23 acres at John Pettit and Longview. And ironically, a developer is going to take away the deer sanctuary and put a sanctuary there for people. My concern is for the deer. If you look at an aerial photograph of that area, there's nowhere for them to go. They'll be crossing 575 or the Etowah River or 140. There's nowhere for them to go. A lot of time with development, there's other forests. They can just move on a little. There's nowhere. That property's in the middle of the city. So since the city built a cat house for all the cats that were displaced when we put up the parking lot, I was wondering if the city has any plans for all these poor deer. And it concerns me. I think about it often, so I'm just here to try to get you to think about it too. Where are these deer going to go? Are there any plans? We're going to save the native plants, but we're going to throw the deer to the 4 winds. I mean, there's got to be some kind of plan. They can't all live in our backyards. That's about all I have to say. I hope you'll think about it. I don't know if there's anything you can possibly do about it, but it's a concern for me, and I hope it's a concern for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Scott Zarazano. And please correct me when you get to the podium if I mispronounce your name. I'm sorry. So.
I love deer too, but I wanted to speak on the affordable housing. My name is Scott Zarazano. I live at 605 Longleaf Trace up in Laurel Canyon. Anyway, I just wanted to share a couple of things that we had talked about in the neighborhood. I've been in real estate for 37 years as an investor, and have been around the projects that we're talking about, the affordable housing, in 3 different states, being Florida, Georgia, and Texas, and just wanted to share some insights as to how that worked out. All the projects were different, but they all had commonalities, and the commonalities weren't too good. The major one is the density issue. It produces, you guys are looking at putting 24 houses on 2 acres. It's a 1/12 of an acre per place. And I mean, they're going to be 0 lot lines. So the density is already tough up where we are now. I don't know if you guys go up that road too much, but that would definitely increase it to a point where it'd be kind of tough. The fact they're fee simple, I mean, there's no rules. There's going to be no HOAs. You're going to have 0 lot lines. So they're going to be literally on the line, and 12 of them in every acre. So just, and I guess it's a question, and I know it's a monologue, but the question would be, with the 15% of the houses in Canton being over 300 grand, it's a little bit beyond me as to why you put that kind of development specifically where you have high dollar houses behind it. It would seem you put it in a place where there was more like kind dollar-wise. And lastly, you get to the point where some of the statistics, when you put a setting like you're trying to put, you definitely have statistics that show you have more crime. And with it being fee simple, there's no obligation for them to take care of their house like would be like kind to anyone in the neighborhood. They'd be able to do whatever they wanted to. You'd have parking on the streets, and you frequently, as one last item, have too many people and too small of a house. And these are going to be 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. And it's going to be overriding population-wise. The density will be out of control. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Keith Leo or Tio?
Good evening, Mayor Grant and council members. My name is Kelly Leo. I live at 105 Laurel Canyon Trail. I too am concerned about the affordable housing projects that are being proposed in our city. I'm not sure how many of you saw the Tribune article today, but it's titled, "Canton Considering Turning City Property into Affordable Housing." Points from the article include Canton's population increased 170% from 2000 to 2010. 42% of Canton's housing is multi-unit, a higher percentage than Cherokee County and Georgia. Canton has a 5.6% vacancy rate, which is greater than Cherokee County and Georgia. Homes valued between $150,000 and $300,000 make up a large portion of the city. Do we really need more affordable housing in Canton? Based on the points from the Tribune article, it seems like we have more than our fair share. Mayor Grant, you also posted on your Facebook page, we need more affordable housing for all current and future residents, for everyone who works at Northside Hospital Cherokee, nurses to radiologists to doctors who are currently residing and paying taxes in other cities. Basically, a live where you work strategy. That's nice in theory. It's not possible to only allow Northside Hospital employees or Canton workers to purchase these homes. Cheap housing appeals to everyone, whether they work in Canton or not. People will be coming from downtown Atlanta, Washington, D.C. Heck, they'll be coming from New Jersey for cheap housing in Canton. No one can control who will buy these homes. Build it and they will come, and they'll come from everywhere. The workforce project adjacent to Laurel Canyon that is being proposed, again, per your Facebook page, Mr. Mayor, the land was purchased several years ago for a future fire station and was no longer needed due to consolidation within the county. The price point of $200,000 to $250,000 can be achieved, per you, Mr. Mayor, because the city owns the land. This means that our hard-earned tax dollars will be given to people that did not pay Canton taxes to entice them to move to the city by offsetting the cost of the land to them and offering them inexpensive housing. A better deal than what most of these people in this room probably got when we purchased our homes. We're paying for this. We are the Canton City tax dollar payers. Mr. Mayor, you also boast that you want Canton to be the coolest small town in America. Does 20 houses jammed onto a 2-acre parcel support the small town feel? Do you want your small town to be turned into a big town, maybe a Woodstock or a Buckhead? More people equals more traffic and the potential for more crime. We have enough affordable housing. We need to ask ourselves, do we want to live in a small, cool town or a big town with more traffic and more crime? We need to decide this. Thank you.
Charlie Dole. Please remain in order, please. Charlie Dole.
Charles Doyle, 346 Woodridge Pass. Where does this project stand today? Is there a building schedule? Is there a completion date? Are there any designs, any plans that we can look at? Why was our community not consulted beforehand about this type of housing? One would think that moving forward, you might like to hear the voices from the people that are going to be affected. Have there been any impact studies done that shows the need for this type of housing in Canton? Why this location? It doesn't fit in with the existing development. Have you ever considered any other locations? One that pops into mind is the old fire station number 9, which was recently closed. How many more of these things are planned for the future? Is there a master plan? Be nice to see. Has there been any traffic studies done to show how it's going to affect the traffic? Have you looked at any similar projects and how they panned out after a year or two? 20 units on 2 acres doesn't sound very feasible to me. It sounds more like a beehive. What is the goal for reaching the necessary affordable workforce housing? How many more projects like this are planned? Where and when? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Skip Thompson.
Actually, I'm Charles Thompson. I go by Skip.
Okay.
Charles Thompson, 106 Laurel Canyon Trail, Canton, Georgia. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak today at today's council meeting. My wife, Pam Thompson, spoke before you a couple weeks ago. As my wife stated, we have many options when we were looking to move out of Hickory Flat 3 years ago. We chose the city of Canton for 4 simple reasons: small town feeling, low traffic, low crime, and green space. I suspect that many of the people choosing to move here are moving for the same reason, and that's why our growth has been so tremendous over the last 10 plus years. I would like to take a moment to voice my contention with the way I figured that. So I get to come back another time.
You can come back at our next meeting. If you want to go ahead and email your comments to us, I think we have one more speaker. If you want to email your comments to us, that is fine. So.
Mayor, would it be possible to allow another 5 minutes for the rest of the speakers?
That is up to council.
Make a motion if that would be allowed.
Second.
So we have a motion to extend by 5 minutes total and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, we have 5 more minutes total. So
I can continue?
Continue, please.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to take a moment to voice my contention with the way the mayor has handled the public request for more information on the Laurel Canyon Affordable Housing Project. I believe a great opportunity for leadership was lost recently when my wife reached out to the mayor for further understanding and to clear up rumors we had heard in our neighborhood. While the mayor did answer many of her questions, he later reposted a private message she had written in a Facebook, our neighborhood Facebook page. Sorry. The private message was meant to inform our neighbors of new project so that they could make their own opinions. Somehow the mayor wrongly received a copy of this private post and used the post to try to silence and bully my wife. Instead of welcoming the questions and concerns, he used the opportunity to insult her character by making unfounded innuendos about her ulterior motives. He allowed his Facebook followers to further insult her by name-calling and unsubstantiated comments. A good leader would have thanked her for being an involved citizen and helped her understand the plan and its objectives. This is exactly what is wrong with politics today. They only want to throw mud, name-call, and try to intimidate anybody that has questions or shows oppositions to their work. It may be a form of suppression, it may be unintentional, no matter, it needs to stop. Why not be a leader by informing, supporting, representing your constituents? I'm sure that that's the way our founding fathers had in mind when they created our form of government. What started out as a concern about what would be developed in our front door has now turned into concern about uncontained growth of a beautiful small town. The Tribune wrote an article today that we just talked about of the goal of this council, and it appears that uncontained growth is that plan. In fact, we've just heard about a bunch more possible rental properties going out in the town. Those who advocate against this growth is seen as people that are out of touch or do not want poor people living by them. That is just a bullying attack and should not be tolerated. The fact is, the reason we have so much growth in our city is because people have come across the nation fleeing overtaxed, overpopulated, overbuilt communities that have seen massive growth in homelessness, crime, and traffic. They want to come here, and you want to make it easier and more affordable to them. There is nothing wrong with trying to make housing more affordable for the workforce, but the question is always, how do we make it affordable? Do we fix the real problem of out-of-control costs, and we just heard about interest rates and rising out-of-control costs, or do we Band-Aid the problem by using taxpayer monies to subsidize a few houses for a few people just to create an illusion that we are doing something good for our city? Lastly, who decides on this free taxpayer land and the building plans out of the taxpayer money that you have stated you will give away to 18 to 20 buyers? How will you keep investors from buying this, renting it out, and raising the right prices to meet market demand? I believe there needs to be a lot more discussion and citizen input into the decision before it proceeds. Most importantly, I believe that this city council needs to inform, represent, and welcome all their constituents. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson. Mr. Zach Ricketts. Zach Ricketts. Okay. That was all our public comment. Move forward into new business. Item A, discussion of community revitalization plan as requested by Dominion Housing Initiative. Mr. Patton.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, council members. If you recall, this was on the last agenda. Dominion requested consideration of this item. You recall, Dominion received approval to develop a senior apartment project within the Riverstone area by City Council earlier this year. Be located at Martin Luther King Boulevard, Bluffs Parkway. State of Georgia recently announced a release of funds for a statewide competitive application process with a 4% private activity bond program. Part of that requirement for the application on that is a community revitalization plan. Dominion has submitted a community revitalization plan, and someone from Dominion is here to talk about the plan itself as well as answer any questions. I'm here to answer any questions the council members may have. I do know that Dominion also did send out notification letters to all the property owners within 1,000 feet of the meeting and the potential community revitalization plan. I'm not sure if there's anyone in the audience that would want to provide community input. That is a part of the requirement of the application process.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Matt Hodges with Dominion, 525 North Avenue Northeast. So this community revitalization plan is targeted for projects located in qualified census tracts, and specifically one of the projects that falls in it is the Dominium Senior Project, and the other projects that we targeted were existing apartments owned by the Canton Housing Authority. So just a little quick history is Georgia DCA allocates the 4% low-income housing tax credit, and in 2020 they shut down applications, and they have not opened up applications for 2 years. So now on October 14th of 2022, they will open up applications for the first time. And the reason they shut down applications originally is because the bond program was oversubscribed. And because of that oversubscription, they've changed the 4% program to be a competitive program. And the reason this community revitalization plan is in front of you today is you can receive points for the DCA application if a community revitalization plan is approved by the council. So we put this plan together, which is likely in your packet, that kind of outlines the targeted area. We used the 2040 comprehensive plan, the city roadmap, the housing and needs assessment, kind of showing the great need for affordable housing in Canton. I think 45% of citizens in Canton could qualify for this 60% AMI housing, as well as the senior housing is really needed. So approving the plan will really help get the senior apartment complex approved in this next application. And we also did include the Canton Housing Authority properties as well, because I believe one of their properties they're looking to re-syndicate. So it's an existing deal where they're looking to rehab it. So the plan will help the development score more points and make the project a reality. So happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Mr. Carlo? Ms. Schmidt?
No, I mean, I just don't know that this is clear for people who don't understand tax credits and all of that kind of stuff.
So basically the background on the program is that developers are incentivized for meeting certain thresholds for rental income units using the tax credit plan. But there's points that are assigned to those applications. So in the state of Georgia, Georgia Department of Community Affairs is the state housing authority for Georgia. So they receive an allocation of bonds that they can use for the state of Georgia and projects in Georgia from federal HUD. And they do an application process. In the past, it was not competitive, but in this current round, they've made it competitive since they've just started it back. So in theory, what they're trying to do is, instead of having voucher programs, the goal of HUD is to have developer programs where developers are building through tax credits some of the affordable product. This particular project was approved by council as a site for a senior 55 and up apartment complex, and that was approved last year.
Yes.
In this particular case, when they first applied, there was not a program that was opened up by DCA. They've learned of the program over the summer, but they've also learned of the fact, and I think it was in one of the slides, the census tract that this sits in is losing its qualified census tract designation. So that northern part in that picture that was 2021 qualified census tract is going away based on new census data. So for this project to be eligible for that funding and get those points, they need to get the application in as part of this current round. They would not be eligible for it in a future round. One of the things that the housing study did show is that there is a lack, not only in Canton, but in all of Cherokee County, for a senior targeted rental community. There's not a place for seniors who might become widowed or might live in a home place that end up having to sell it. There's not a place for them to rent in. And so that was one of the considerations for approving that particular site. If council agrees with the community revitalization plan, it will be included by Dominium in their application. It could also be included by the Canton Housing Authority in their application and would benefit both projects if they decide to move forward. There's not a guarantee, though, in a competitive process that either project would get funded. There's also not a regulation that both projects could not be funded. So in this particular manner, we're taking a project that's already been approved for development in the city and offering up to that developer the opportunity to be a part of that tax-exempt bond market.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But for clarification, the funding is not from the city. So.
No, the funding is actual federal HUD funding for this type of project, and it's passed through by the state.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Mr. Peppers, for clarification, is this Section 8 housing?
No, there's a difference between Section 8 and low-income housing tax credits. There's a great article that Forbes did back in April, I think it was, of this year, doing a comparison between the two. But Section 8 housing is a voucher program that started in the 1930s that basically allowed individuals to get into housing at a certain rate. Low-income housing tax credit doesn't carry a voucher with it. What it does is it provides a tax incentive through the bonding of the development, the construction cost, to the developer that allows their cheaper financing to help them prorate rents to make the rents more affordable. And that's a process that has been moving across state and local governments probably for the last 10, 15 years. It's become more and more attractive. And it's actually cut down on a significant amount of federal debt because that voucher program has been phased out as these newer units have come on board.
Do we have any guarantees that this property would stay under the voucher system and not go to Section 8?
They're unable to do both. That doesn't exist. So the way a tax credit project works is that a good example of that is Canton Mill Lofts, for instance, on Riverstone. That was first done as a tax credit project. Where that particular building had an apartment developer that wanted to be able to go in and convert an industrial building into loft apartments. But at the time, the cost of the deal was just too expensive. So they applied for low-income housing tax credits. By having those tax credits, they had to agree to have those controlled rental rates for a period of time. Once those rental rates, or once that period of time elapsed, that whole project has moved into market rate rents today. Now, what you will find in some of these projects that after they get to that time frame, they'll reapply for renovation funding so that they can go in and redo the entire development. And when they go after that funding, then they're locked in for another period of years at those lower rates. Mr. Patton has another.
And another thing is Dominion has partnered with Canton Housing Authority because this is a bonding type program. The bonds would be issued through Canton Housing Authority, DCA, and the Housing Authority has already provided support for Dominion in regards to the bond issuances and that sort of thing. It's a DCA, but does require a local agency which has bonding ability to participate as well. But this is not the 4% bond program, the low-income tax credit program is not vouchers. This bond money at a lower interest rate provides for renovations and new construction of existing units or construction of new units. It's on the front end, if you will. The old Section 8 program, which I thought pretty much had done away with it, is vouchers to individuals. And then they would pay whoever they choose to rent from with these vouchers.
And you bring up a good point about the lofts having been vouchers and then went to market rate. No?
No, they were not vouchers, but they were part of a low-income
Right, tax
housing
credits.
credit program in which there were some income limitations and rental restrictions, and that was for a period of 15 years. The developer could have chosen to extend for another 15-year period if they wanted to renovate or anything of that nature. The original developer actually sold the project to another company, and they chose to, if you will, not reinvest and carry it and encumber for another 15 years, and it went market rate.
We definitely need a product for seniors who need lower income housing. How do we prevent this product from going market rate?
The only way that can be prevented is that time constraint that's on the bond. So once you get past that time constraint, then it's actually up to the property owner to decide if they want to continue in the program and go after renovation funds, or if they want to take it market rate. The city really doesn't have control on keeping it as a market, keeping it one way or the other.
Thank you for putting that on public record.
I would also add that this deadline of October 14th is just step one of an application process. This deadline of October 14th is for Georgia Department of Community Affairs to kind of score all the applications they receive. Once they go through the scoring of all the applications, they will receive points are awarded for each application based upon about 8 pages of scoring criteria that are established for the program. Then they will notify communities that they are private development interest, that they are allowed to go to step 2, which is a full, complete application. The bonds and the monies available for development or renovation will not come on board and be available until after January 1st of next year.
I do have a couple of comments. So there's 2 things in play kind of in the market, especially in the rental market. Number one, market rates are going up. I've heard examples of at least 3 complexes in the city of Canton that have raised rents between $500 and $900 per month. That creates an affordable housing issue. Projects like the Dominion project that offers low-income tax credits is a godsend for people like the Cherokee Senior Services Center, who can't wait for those 251 units to be built because their constituents have a desperate need for affordable housing, and this is a solution, a 15-year solution, which, as Mr. Peppers stated, could be extended for another period of time. So I would say we need more of this. The Canton Housing Authority certainly serves their purpose, but we need more, not only senior affordable housing, we need non-senior affordable housing. We need it all over the city, and we need it desperately. Not maybe need it, not possibly need it. We desperately need it now, and this is a solution that surely the one person made a comment about people can come from all over the country. Of course they can. My guess is that we're going to have people in Canton that get the word quicker, and we're going to fill up those units. I was fortunate enough to go with a couple of city council members over to another Dominion project in another part of Atlanta a few months ago, and it was just amazing. The amenities, all the smiles on these seniors' faces, and their rents were sub $1,000 in many cases. So it's a need, and this is a solution, and I would argue that we need more of this. Thank you.
Mr. Carlo? I remember when Dominion was here and we were talking to him about this project and council was considering it, there was discussion about when this would turn over, if it would turn over, and what protections can be in place that this will continue to be a 55 and up affordable community. If I remember right, there were recording covenants against the land as it was. Is that correct?
I think the covenants are for the age restriction. I don't think it would.
Right, but we'd have that limit
That's
in
correct.
place. There you go. Certainly, if you were limited to only be able to rent to people over the age of 55. probably hamstrung into how much you can charge for that in the building that we approved. So I appreciate that. That's what, remember we talked about covenants, we'll make sure we got through it. Thank you.
Ms. Wilson.
I wonder if we could go back in the slides to the community revitalization target areas. And I can see them here because I can make mine larger, but I thought the audience may not be able to see what the targeted areas are. Do you mind if I read those, Mayor?
No, go ahead.
The targeting area over to the right is MLK and Bluffs Parkway. Then there over to the left is Oakside Canton Housing Authority. Then down below that is Ship Street, which is Canton Housing Authority. And then below that is Jefferson Circle, which is Canton Housing Authority. I just want to be sure that our audience that is here tonight were aware of what these targeted areas are.
And I would note that further back within the package that staff submitted to you, there is an amendment to the targeted areas map that does include the old Tippin School site that will be incorporated into the community revitalization plan prior to the City Council's next meeting. And like I said, that would be the fifth targeted area, the old Tippin.
Thank you. Other comments, questions?
We don't need action tonight?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Patton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members.
Item B, discussion and possible action to award change order number 2 to Clark Reeves Young for electrical changes at the water pollution control plant. Mr. Otavian?
Thank you. Last meeting, I presented this change order on electrical changes associated with the plant due to several items, the going from 6 to 7 MGD, so maybe some differences in code interpretations, some increasing conduit wire size and things like that. And this change is specifically for the electrical subcontractor to get all those materials and have them installed as part of the phase 1 portion of the project, which is getting us to the 6 MGD hopefully a year from now.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Otavian? Comments? We discussed this, I think, at length last week. Last meeting, so.
I don't have a comment, but I'd just like to make a motion to approve the change order number 2 to Clark Reeves Young for electrical changes at the water pollution control plant. And y'all, if you haven't been out there, I'm real close and it's looking good.
I second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion.
Thank you.
Item C, discussion and possible action to approve Atkins change order number 1 for the old ball ground sewer and Etowah River Trail.
Presented this one last meeting as well. This incorporates several items. It incorporates the geotechnical services to stabilize the slope that has had some issues. It also incorporates time spent in dealing with alignments to accommodate Georgia Power and their poles over near Heritage Park. And it also accommodates the extension of time that was granted to STRAC due to not having access to the site.
And just the total cost of that change order is $136,500.
$136,500, I think, yeah.
Okay. Questions, comments?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve, a second. Any further comments, questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion.
Thank you.
Move into new business. Item A, discussion and possible action to release a water line easement located on property owned by Canton. Mr. Otavian?
I'm not asking for money this time.
Good.
On this property, I believe it is where the Vanta is going. There was an old water line from the tanks that were on the north side of MLK that kind of went through. When the property was first taken over and graded, the water line was removed. So the line's gone, but this is more of a formality to release the easement. And that was a request of the new property owner.
You would never see any future need for that easement with the proximity to the reservoir or anything going?
No. Well, we've got enough water lines surrounding the property that we don't need anything cutting through.
Okay. The developer will be responsible for all the water lines that they build in the middle of it.
In the middle of it, yes. Yeah, they'll all be private. So.
Okay. Questions, comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the action to release the water line easement located on the property owned by Bright Sasser.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Item B, discussion and possible action on the compliance engine. Mr. Fortner.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. You should have received some information in your packets regarding the compliance engine and a short video. Basically what this is a online web portal for contractors who inspect and maintain fire suppression systems in the city limits to report to us directly, to the authority having jurisdiction. Free, best thing, free to the city. Doesn't cost you anything, so I know y'all love that.
Say that again.
We like
free.
that.
Doesn't cost the city anything.
Will you tell Dave that word? He's never heard of it.
Free, Dave.
See, Dave?
It kind of drives compliance. It kind of compels these businesses to be compliant. What else was I going to say? Anyway,
it's free.
We feel like it kind of it kind of ties into the roadmap for success, improving infrastructure. So I brought Jay with me, fire division manager. If you have any technical questions for him, I'll try to answer anything. We are seeking discussion and approval tonight if possible.
Okay. Jay, how much does this cost?
I was going to ask you if this is free.
Right answer.
Mayor, Council, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. How are you, Jay?
Good. This is a fantastic program. So before we get into details, walk with me. We have to inspect every business. We have to inspect every multifamily dwelling in the city, and sometimes more than once. The most critical part of that is fire protection systems. It's not just the sprinklers above your head and the fire alarms and the fire extinguishers. There's much more. When you go to a restaurant, you have a wet chemical suppression system in the kitchen where the chef's working. That hood has to be cleaned every, so many quarters or semi-annually. There are frequencies for everything. There's emergency generator systems. The list goes on and on. There's many fire protection systems you don't even know that are working. However, state law requires these systems to be inspected annually. Some are semi-annually, some are quarterly. It's the biggest challenge in our inspection is to get that paperwork, right? There's test reports, there's compliance reports, deficiencies, impairments. I will tell you that in your entire city, 50% of those systems will go non-compliant. And that's not just Canton, that's nationally. That is a national statistic. You just can't keep up with it. You have a little over 1,600 businesses right now, and that number's going up. So we have to visit manually. We have to walk in. And by the way, that doesn't stop. We continue to do so. We have to inspect all the businesses. But what if all of that paperwork could come to one place? So every morning I can turn my computer on. I could get to the Brycer icon, bring it up, and I have a dashboard. A dashboard that could help you out. I have metrics. I can actually tell you how compliant the city fire protection systems are. There's a number. I get reports of non-compliant systems. Those that are compliant, those are overdue. Letters are sent out on our behalf by Brycer. Our logo's on the sheet. My signature's at the bottom. It reminds businesses, hey, you've got an inspection coming up. If you're overdue, it sends out an overdue letter with the City of Canton logo on it. They do everything for us. Now, you got to be asking yourself, well, how do they make money? So they fee the fire protection contractors $17 every time to send in a report to the compliance engine, which ultimately is my computer. So at one look, I could see what our compliance is for every business, every multifamily dwelling in the city. 14 cities have already gotten on board. That was a month ago. Probably 16 or 17. It's rapidly growing. It's popular within my community. And it's, I think, definitely something that we need to, increase our compliance. And that is our overarching goal, is compliance in our department. Compliance means a lot of things. It means that we're protecting the buildings, right? We're keeping people safe, our residents. It means that we're taking care of our visitors and our first responders. We have bidirectional antennas on really big buildings so that first responders can talk on their radios and that signal can get out. If you didn't know that, that's a fire protection system. It requires an annual inspection. Brycer just does it all for us, and it continues to tell us what's not compliant, what's compliant. It's a pretty slick system, and it sends out all the letters. It communicates much better than we could. So that's the goal today, is for you to sign off on this. It's free, and it's a no-brainer.
Great. Thank you, Jay. Any questions, comments?
I do have a question. What drives the non-compliance? So you mentioned that you'd have to inspect every business, every multifamily building in the city.
Yes, sir.
And then consider everything in compliance. So is it date-based that would drive the compliancy?
It's actually reports created by fire protection contractors, okay? Those reports are hard to get. Most businesses don't even know where they are. Bigger corporate models, they'll tell you that, well, our headquarters has that somewhere. You'll get an email a week later. It's hard to put your finger on the pulse. So really, the law is what drives compliance. However, a business owner many times will think that the fire protection company that they hired is doing it. They'll pay them to automatically do it every year. Many times, the fire protection contractor will fail them. And that's where you get your non-compliance from. So this is on the cloud. Yes, this will turn out to be a database. It will be an information engine where we can actually, know who's non-compliant without walking through the door. Does this take the place of fire inspections? No. It just saves us time. It's free to our taxpayers, it's free to the city, and it's pretty cheap for compliance. And the real question is how much is not compliance? Right. I think we all know what the answer is.
Yeah. So more of it's an efficiency, it's a time saving.
It is absolutely a time saver. It makes us more efficient. It keeps us moving a little bit more efficiently through the city. It takes a long time to do an annual fire inspection. If you can imagine, Cherokee High School was an entire day. It's got so many fire protection devices on there, it would amaze you. We have lots of those. We have small businesses too. It all takes time. If we know going in what our fire protection systems are doing, where they are as far as compliance, we're ahead of the game. Any other questions?
As long as we still still get to see you coming in, Jay. We all love to see you coming
Thanks.
in. So.
Thanks.
It's really
I used to do stuff like this.
Bye,
It's kind of nice to get back into it.
I think it's exciting to have them both here. And I do want to just throw out for city staff that they really set the standard with their animated graphic. I think that all of our anything we should vote on, we should have a little
video.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any further comments, or would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted the motion.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
I do have a dumb question for Mr. Peppers. Mr. Peppers, if this is a free product for them, a tool, why did we have to vote on it? Why couldn't they just go and use it?
It requires an agreement. Now, the agreement allows the city to get out at any time, but I can't technically sign an agreement on behalf of the city.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Item C, discussion possible action on a balloon release ordinance. Ms. Pendley. Welcome. Good evening.
I don't like going after Jay. I just want to say that first and foremost.
Is it free? Is it free? So it's free, though. It's free, right? Just
free
start with
too.
that. Start with that, and you're off
It's
to good
free.
stuff. Up and away. So.
I'm here tonight because the Environmental and Sustainability Advisory Board is wanting to make a recommendation to mayor and council for a balloon release ordinance. So obviously, there's a huge risk in environmental and there's a risk to the environment and wildlife posed by the waste materials from these balloon releases. Some different avenues that has been discussed during our meetings are some things that the city already offers, which would be, a candlelight visual or being a part of our benchmark program where you could, get a bench or a plaque for a bench in honor of your loved one rather than releasing the balloons. So they are asking for discussion and possible action tonight for city staff to work with Mr. Dyer on a balloon release ordinance.
Just to clarify, the action would be to ask Mr. Dyer to work with.
Right.
Yeah.
The committee really wanted council to have some input as to whether or not this was something that was important. And if it was, before Ms. Penley and Mr. Dyer spend time putting something together and then taking it back to the committee for them to formally recommend to you, they don't want to chase the rabbit if you didn't want them to chase the rabbit.
Okay.
Question for you. So how serious is how serious a problem is this? How many balloons? Do you have any data that describes how many balloons are released
in our
quarterly, annually here in Canton?
This is obviously something. I went back and I spoke with Adam Dotson, who's our Parks and Rec manager, and I asked him. I said, "Do we have any, events or anything like that where people have applied for a special events application for a balloon release in the park?" And he went back and he was like, so far he could not find anything on record. I do know that sometimes the schools do this, like Hasty Elementary, Canton Elementary, back when they were, before they separated into the other two schools. I know that the schools a lot of times will do that instead because obviously an elementary school is not going to hold a candlelight visual more than likely because it's during the day that they release balloons. So I was not able to find any statistics necessarily in our area.
Is this something we're considering, like balloon releases on public property, like in city parks, or like a citywide ordinance on banning?
I believe it's more of a citywide ordinance of a ban citywide because I know, neighborhoods do it. Families will get together, at a site and release balloons for their loved ones. It could be on the side of the road. It could be, in a neighborhood, in their backyard, not necessarily in a park.
Okay.
I guess it would depend on the ordinance and how it's written, but are we are we looking at a ban on balloon release, or is it just something to control it?
I believe it's more of a, from what the advisory board spoke of, they're looking more of a citywide ban of the balloon releases to try to pursue a different avenue. So.
Okay. So, and I'm going to ask the question just so that it's out there.
Okay.
And maybe we're trying to, so you said citywide. Is there a number of balloons that, would be illegal? So if I'm just walking down the street with a balloon, imagine it, by accident.
What color?
So cute.
Red. It's red. And I'm not making, I don't want to make it sound making fun of this at all. No, it's, I'm going to ask the question because that's how I operate here. But do I get a ticket if I, trip and my balloon's gone? Or do I have 10 balloons? Do I have 15? Is there a number? And
Obviously, there's going to be events that, kids are carrying balloons. I mean, even at First Friday, we have the, balloon, he makes, the hats and silly things and stuff like that. I mean, there will be balloons. This is more of like an organized event, like
mass release.
Exactly.
Mass release.
Exactly. So.
all right. Yeah, because I wanted to just be clear.
Yes.
I know that Ms. Stanton had mentioned that in her public input as well, the effect on the environment. So obviously important. I want to ask the question, put it out there. No questions too dumb.
No,
if I'm asking
I completely understand.
As long as it comes from me. Yeah.
I do, number one, I support our environmental sustainability board and the work that they're doing. If it's important to them, I think it's something that we should consider. I know a lot of cities have done this and moved toward it. It's a goal in our, it's a tenet in our roadmap. And so certainly support our roadmap. At the same time, I think the point about, creating ordinances for the sake of creating ordinances, I strongly support the concept that we make sure we create something that can be enforced, and we do enforce. I mean, going back to years ago to the non-smoking ordinance that we have and is still not enforced, and also I do believe if we do give direction, if council does give direction, that we pursue clear direction to be something that is enforceable, and it's not only clear to council and to our police department and code enforcement, but also clear to our citizens, that what's going to happen if you do release blank amount of balloon. What is a mass? What is mass amount, and but also what is clearly here are other great options. I'd rather it be a positive, prohibitive thing. Consider doing these things, and I think the committee could come up with really great options. Tree plantings and the benchmark program and other things. But I think just to that point, let's be as positive as we can with it. So Ms. McGrew.
Thank you, Ms. Penley. I'd like to invite council to do a little research, and I'm sure many of you already have, and go to the website Balloons Blow. And at this website, you'll see that not only is the balloon itself a tragedy, they take hundreds of years to decompose, even the natural latex ones, but the nylon ribbons attached to them don't. The mylar balloons don't decompose. These ribbons find their way around birds, deer, horses, necks, and feet. They find their way into the waterways around turtles and fish. They find their ways into pastures. Horses have been found with their legs wrapped in ribbons and have fallen and broken their legs and had to be put down. I think that we don't have that many balloon releases in the city of Canton, but I do know that some of the schools have had balloon releases when a student has passed away, when a parent has passed away, when a teacher has passed away. They're beautiful. When you see that mass of balloons go up in the air, it's beautiful and it's moving, but it is damaging and detrimental to the earth and to the animals that live It's a strong thing with me to get rid of this. I offered the school system that if they would convince their PTAs not to do balloon releases, if they would contact me, I would buy them a tree to plant in memorial to whoever had passed away. And I still hold that option open. This is important to take care of our earth. This is the only earth we have, and we're in trouble. So I would like for council to really do some serious thinking about it in the next 2 weeks, do some research on what balloons do. Oh, there is a picture on Balloons Below of a blue balloon, and it's ratty, and it's laying on the sand. And next to this ratty blue balloon is a jellyfish. You know, the animal, the turtle, the squid, does not know what's a balloon and what's a jellyfish. They have found turtles, dolphins, sharks, whales with their bellies full of balloons, ribbons, other plastic garbage that we've thrown away too. So let's give this some serious consideration, please, and help save the earth.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ms. Schmidt?
I was just going to say, I mean, there's not an argument about if balloons are damaging to the environment or not. I just, so I'm fine if this is something that our resident volunteers on a board that we commissioned want to work on. But, and this is echoing what the mayor already said, I just wonder how on earth it could be enforced. Like, are we going to be sending 3 police officers to the children's birthday party? Like, and how fast can they get there? Is a neighbor going to say, I think Joey's about to let go? You know, like, I just don't understand how it's going to work. So that would be my big, like, I would want that to be clear. And again, as the mayor said, like, what would be the definition of a mass balloon release? And then just sort of going beyond that, I would love to see, I know we got an update tonight. I'm not sure how specific it was, so maybe this team is already working on this, but I would love to see them sort of turn this into city sustainability and environmental policies. Like, we don't allow mass balloon releases in our parks or on city property. And then what other types of things like that apply to city events or city rentals, what sort of things might we be able to enact that way? And maybe we have a page on our website that has alternatives to balloon releases and all that kind of stuff. I'm just not sure. I mean, maybe an ordinance is in. I definitely want to hear more, but maybe there's also things that can piggyback on that.
Mr. Carlin was next, but Mr. Carlin, did you have, or Mr. Waterman?
I was just going to say that the process here, I think everybody up here is on board with this going to Bobby and Billy and talk about an ordinance. I don't think anybody up here doesn't think that's a good idea. What involvement will the board have with the creation of that ordinance? I'm not saying they need to be in dialogue about it, but I think I don't want for an ordinance to come to us that this board hasn't had a chance to look at and give some input on. They may not bless it fully, but I need their input to know, since they're asking for it, that they're happy with the ordinance that's coming back.
I think we expect the process would be that staff would be working with that board and looking at options and, you know, whether it's an ordinance, whether it's a policy, where it's located, what the definitions are. Okay. Similar to when we went through the development code, I think what it will be is it will be a discussion. Here's some options. Here's some examples of others. What do you like? What do you not like? What would you like to tailor here? And then that group would decide on something to break as a recommendation back to council for consideration for action.
Great.
Okay. That works. Thank you.
I will say also, the board has looked, I know a few of them have looked at some other cities and their ordinances or even policies, their ordinances regarding a balloon release. So I know that there's been a little bit of discussion, you know, with what other cities are doing and what's working for them. So.
Well, you did answer one of my questions, and that was going to be if there are other cities, and maybe in the discussions with the board to see if, you know, that research could be done. But to go a step further, I think the number one question on my mind would be, how is it enforced? And going as far as to those cities that do have that ordinance in place, going to that city's police department and asking, if they have any data on enforcement of mass balloon releases.
Or just code enforcement.
Or code enforcement.
May I talk to Brooke?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things I thought of, no, not ever. One of the things I thought of, as I was saying, in a way to let people know, is places that sell balloons could have a sign that says, in the city of Canton, mass balloon releases are not allowed. And they might take note of this if somebody's ordering 200 balloons and make the person aware of this ordinance. If somebody's buying 40 balloons for a birthday party, they might say, we can't release them here, that sort of thing. Just let businesses who sell balloons know what our ordinance is. And if the 3-year-old's balloon slips off the wrist, they're okay.
Ms.
I make a motion that we begin the process of developing an ordinance for balloon release and leave the responsibility for the input to council, to Mr. Dyer, and to the Sustainability Committee with a recommendation for us. And during their research, if they could give alternatives to things other than what we already have for recognizing special events.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second to Ms. Wilson's motion. Any further discussion, comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Finley. Mr. Peppers.
Good evening. Someone want to time me for 10 minutes?
Yes.
Ready to start it.
You should have received a copy and also an email earlier today with our operations report for September. I'm not going to go over everything in here, but did want to make note that it is on the city's website. There's some information on there on sanitation. I gave the speech on that at the last meeting, but there's some information in there about that, some information about some project updates for us. I will tell you that one project we are having a little bit of an issue on is the mast arms for the traffic light at Teasley. And that's just timing for those particular arms. There's not much we can do about it. The concrete's in, everything is in except for the signals, and then the concrete pads where they'll put the mast arms up. They don't want to pour those until we actually get the arms in hand. But it could be like a park project. It could be months out, several months out. So I'm letting you know that ahead of time. I will make a change in my operations report about that because I learned of that today.
I am so excited.
Yeah. I did want to go over some notes because I did see some emails and chatter around on housing. So I did want to go over a little bit of information on this, and I sent some of this out earlier today, just some data that I had collected. One of the points that I wanted to make is that between 2016 and 2020, according to the census, the median value of owner-occupied housing units in Canton was $237,800. In January 2020, so think about census. Census always is a little bit behind. In January of 2020, that number was $274,900. By May of 2022, so we're talking 2 years and 4 months in the future, that price had gone from $274,900 to $505,000. And the current median home sales price value of July 2022 had dropped, but it's at $452,500. Median household income for the city is $61,459. Adjusted median income, or AMI, is the number that we look at. Census for our city shows that the average household size is 2.83. So we're not going to round down. We'll figure that the average household is 3 individuals. So according to those AMI tables, which lump Canton in with all of North Fulton, that's our AMI area, the 80% of adjusted median income for a 3-person home is $69,400. Remember, our median household income is $61,459, so we're below that 80% for a 3-person household. At 50% of AMI, that means 50% of that adjusted median income, the number is now $43,400. HUD looks at a formula that says you should not spend more than 30% of your income on housing-related expenses. And so if you look at 30% of the 80% of AMI, that means that the goal would be $20,820 a year, or $1,735 a month. Now, I will say this. In April of 2019, the average rents in the city of Canton were $1,200, and that was about $200 below the national average. In April of this year, the average rents in the city of Canton had grown to $1,647. So that's an increase of $447 between April of 19 and April of 22. That number is above the national average now. So if you think about it this way, that rental rate at $1,647, when you've got 30% of AMI, which says you shouldn't spend more than $1,735 a month on household, that household also includes things like insurance. So if you're renter's insurance, your utilities should also be included in that number. That's part of the issue that we're seeing with rental rates and what have you with AMI. I did mention earlier tonight the article from Forbes on the difference between LIHTC and Section 8 housing. I thought it was a great article. I was glad to share that with you. There is a misconception that we hear, and I've heard this chatter this week for some residents as well, about taxes and apartment complexes. There's this misconception that if it's a rental property, the rental property does not pay property taxes to the city, and that's simply not true. Every property in the city, unless it's owned by the local government or certain nonprofits that are excluded from property taxes by the state of Georgia, are assessed and pay property taxes. Renters may not receive a property tax bill. It may be the property owner that gets the tax bill, or it may be the complex they live in that gets the tax bill. But they are taxed. Renters are not eligible for exemptions, so they are not eligible for the senior tax exemption, the disabled tax exemption, or homestead tax exemption. Below, I've got a little bit of information for you on a couple of apartment complexes. So the Grand Reserve, for instance, at Reservoir Drive has 309 units. The fair market value of that property is just a little north of $70 million. And last year, it paid $152,000 in property taxes to the city. That's an average of $493 per unit. Keep in mind that they might have 1-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, 3-bedroom units, but right at $500 in property taxes. Legends at Laurel Canyon, which is on State Route 140, has 266 units, so it's one of the smaller ones that we have. The fair market value there was $46 million, and they paid just south of $100,000 in city taxes. Their average per unit was $374. The Crest at Laurel Canyon has 350 units. It's next door to the Laurel Canyon site. Our site in Laurel Canyon sits between the Crest and Legends. It has a fair market value of $77.7 million and paid $168,000 in city taxes, or an average of $480 a unit. A specific note I would have is that if you were an individual who had a senior tax exemption and you lived in an owner-occupied structure in the city and you took advantage of that exemption, and that structure was valued at $550,000, you would pay about $600 in city property. So that gives you kind of a comparison, the $600 versus the $493 for an apartment unit. Pretty comparable. Some questions were brought up tonight about the site at Laurel Canyon, so I'll go over a little history with that. It was initially discussed by this council to look at that site in 2020. It was a discussion in our retreat in February of that year, prior to the pandemic, and then it was a discussion at several other meetings during that year and the construction of the city's roadmap. In fact, in the city's roadmap, there is a comment on one of the ways that we will get there to creating great neighborhoods, which says that we will review all city-owned properties for possible residential development. Additionally, we say in there that we will also develop and implement a micro-cottage home program or other novel housing initiatives. We also mentioned some measurable goals. Those goals included increasing the variety of housing through varied price points, design, and construction. We even talked about increasing estate lots of 2 acres and more. We talked about increasing housing authority units, increasing the downtown residential units, and overall increasing variety of housing to make sure everyone has housing available to them. Back to that Laurel Canyon lot. The city received that lot in 2005. When it received the lot, there were no residential developments, no residential homes yet in Laurel Canyon. It was part of the master plan for that particular neighborhood. In June of 2021, council went forward with a public hearing to revise the master plan for that lot to include residential as a potential use. That was approved in the subsequent meeting on June 17th of 2021. In March of this year, the city adopted a change to its development ordinance to allow for cottage housing. And that came in a public hearing in March and came as a recommendation from the Unified Development Committee, which had reviewed that in several different public meetings. Discussion and action was had to hire Lou Oliver to do a site plan, a concept plan for that site in May of this year. And then discussion and action was to hire an architect to come up with architectural plans for different types of residential housing on August 4th. We have hired a firm to do a design for that lot, but we haven't approved a design for that lot. I can tell you there has never been a discussion with staff where we have talked about 24 units on that lot. Most of the discussions we have had have said we think they'll come back maybe 15 units at the high end, probably more like 12 at the lower end. We expect to get the concept back from that developer later this fall. Once we get the concept, we will have that presented to the council in a public meeting. There will be an opportunity for council to review that and decide if that's the way we want to move forward with a concept. Once we decide to move forward on it, then we've got to figure out how we're going to get it built. Are we going to do it? Are we going to sell it to someone to develop? Would we consider providing some lots to Habitat for Humanity as an example? What types of product do we want on there? Are we okay at that point with what we've had designed? What we'd like to see on the lot? There'll be lots of opportunities for public input. At this particular time, the only place that we haven't received public input is on the concepts that our consultant's working on that we haven't even seen. So there is an opportunity for the public to be involved, but there's also an opportunity for the public to look back in our record and see plenty of opportunities for involvement. There was a comment that I saw in a particular thread that said that Dominium was originally noted as a fee-simple owner-occupied project. That's just false. That project came to the council as multifamily. It came to the council as low-income senior. That's what was discussed earlier tonight at the meeting. I will make one comment. A lot of people talk about subsidized housing. There's a lot of ways that housing is subsidized. It may be that it's subsidized in the land cost. It may be a program like LIHTC where it's subsidized in rents as it's done through the bond market. It could be subsidized in that there's a park nearby and there are certain services that are provided to residents in a particular area that may not be provided to residents in another area. There's a great example in the city of Canton where there's a golf course that the city has owned and paid the debt on for many years and provided free water. And the city purchased that golf course out of bankruptcy to keep a development moving forward for residential development. We hope at some point we'll be able to sell the golf course. But honestly, the taxpayers of our city have subsidized that particular neighborhood for a number of years to keep a golf course operating there to make it a valuable development for our city. Subsidization comes in many forms. It may come through a senior tax exemption. It may come through a park. It may come through a public road that's cut for a neighborhood. It may come through low-income housing tax credits. I am happy to always talk to any resident that reaches out to me. My phone number is 770-704-1508. That's the direct line. I will talk to anyone. I will email with anyone. I am happy to have a conversation, provide them this information, and answer any questions they might have. I'm here to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Peppers. Thank you especially for Schmidt. I was getting there. Thank you for that great overview and that information and facts. So, Ms. Schmidt.
Thank you. 2 questions. I just wanted to reiterate, again, I know you explained that for the city-owned site between the 2 apartment complexes near Laurel Canyon, that we don't have plans yet. We haven't approved any plans. It's really just sort of in a brainstorming phase. So how would there be a way for a resident to factually state that this site would not ever have an HOA? Would that be also false?
Well, one of the things we talked about early on was what could happen at a site like this. And it was important, at least from staff perspective when we were brainstorming, that it does have a homeowners association. As you develop a tight site like that, you're going to have individuals who probably don't have garages. There's going to have to be some rules about parking on the street. There's likely to be some small common area that everyone shares, and there need to be rules on how that common area works and how it's paid for and how it's maintained. So I think you have to have a homeowners association, but that doesn't mean you have a homeowners association that has $1,200 a year dues, so to speak.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that for the record. And then is there any indication, and this is probably not something we can answer tonight with data, but maybe Mr. Patton could look at it for us. Is there any indication from numbers in Canton that any apartment or townhome complex of any kind has lowered the property values of any of the surrounding neighborhoods around those developments?
I guess we could go back and look at property taxes over a historical period of time, but in general, most everybody's property taxes and property values have gone up over the last 20 years in Canton.
That was my understanding too, but I just wondered because people keep saying that their property values are going to be lowered by these developments. So I was just wondering if that was fact-based in any way.
One of the things I will say to council, and this is a great tool for the public, we haven't done it yet this year because we don't have the data, but we do a heat map on our GIS system that's part of the city's website under mapping. And it compares property taxes or fair market value taxes from one year to the next. And so it will show you on the heat map which properties went up in fair market value and which properties went down in fair market value. Now, it won't tell you why, for instance, but there is a tag to the appraiser's site on that map, and you can go and actually pull up the property tax appraisal for properties and read through the record. But it will show you what went up and what went down. And so we will get that. Normally, we have to wait on the completed digest, and it does take some time. It's usually something that's up by the end of the calendar year. So I'll let council know as soon as it becomes available.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Patton, did you have something you wanted to contribute to that?
Talking about valuations, apartments, single family, that sort of thing, and Mr. Dyer can chime in as well. But there are numerous court cases throughout the state of Georgia that residential against residential does not affect decreased property values.
Thank you.
I also would note for City Council that the particular site that is under consideration for development for residential purposes is 0.62 of a mile as the crow flies from the closest single-family detached residential lot at Laurel Canyon.
Thank you.
Question, please. Mr. Patton, I know that you're familiar with cottages on Vaughn and Clarkston and also the ball ground cottages. And might we have some data on their tax value and how the communities are doing there?
I can certainly get that for the council. I don't have it before me exactly. I can get information for ball ground fairly quickly through the Cherokee County GIS system. But generally, like I said, and this goes back my whole training in planning and zoning, residential against residential does not affect property value.
Right. I was in a webinar last week on ADUs and small cottages, and one of the panel members was an executive living in a 500 square foot cottage in Clarkston, and young professional. So it seems like a great deal.
Have I had a chance to go over and look at the cottages on Vaughn over there?
I haven't been yet.
Go look at them.
And I think in reference to the residential against residential, I know we altered or enhanced the zoning to include residential to be able, if we wanted to do this project on that 2 acres there, we could. But would you remind us and remind council what the property is also includes zoning? What could be built on there? I mean,
it has
today?
It has a list of commercial uses that were approved in the master plan that run the gamut of
retail,
just about any type of retail, office
medical,
would be allowed on that particular property.
Vape shop, used cars dealership. I mean, those retail basically, or I mean,
I'm not sure it goes that far. I'll have to pull that old master file because that was approved in 2002 or 2004.
Yeah, but there are a lot of uses, correct?
Didn't we go through this with Great Sky on the pod 18? And I think even a crematorium could be built there.
No, a crematorium was included in that, so I think at that same time period. So,
question, Mr. Peppers. So for this particular project, is there at least a concept or a square footage that we're kind of targeting? So I think it's between 12 and 24 houses on a 2 acre. Not 2 acres. But to ask that question again, is there a square footage that we're kind of targeting that we think these houses will be?
We basically said to our architect, look at a variety of square footage based on number of bedrooms, probably going to be in the 12 to 1,400 square feet on the large end, and then smaller than that. A lot of it's just going to depend on what we get back from Mr. Oliver on the site.
It's really going to be conditioned upon the concept plan that's presented back to the city in regards to the size of the lots as to how that would affect square footages that could be built on those lots, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, and talking with the architect, 2 of the plans that he's going to be working on is what we're calling affordable workforce house plans. And those basically are going to be 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes that could be 1,400 square feet, could be 1,200 square feet. Just depends. There's a lot that factors into ultimately what that price point is going to be because you do have to factor in land, other infrastructure costs prior to moving towards actually getting a building permit. I'm working on some what-if scenarios, if you will, for certain price points and backing away from that with some proposed land costs, that sort of thing. Try to get an idea of what kind of square footages we could realize based upon my what-if scenarios, if you will, just trying to kind of wrap my head around what we can do up there. But it's really going to be dependent upon what the consultant comes back with.
Thank you.
It won't be 300 square foot tiny homes, correct? I mean, that's, I think everything that's been discussed so far in the meetings that I've been present in. I know Mr. Patton's been doing a lot of work, and Mr. Tolan, and we've been in meetings together. I mean, it's all been conceptual, but the basic gist is what can we do to basically reinvent this category in a world-class way that Canton can be proud of, and then other cities can model as a world-class product and have people think differently about this. So obviously people have something very particular in mind when they hear affordable housing, and it conjures up, certain things, and obviously emotional reactions. And it's understandable. It's human nature. But again, we don't have a plan. We don't have things. I think because of the nature that this council is very transparent, and we're like, hey, these are concepts. These are what we're thinking. And Mr. Peppers mentioned that even through the roadmap process, the things that we were exploring on city-owned property throughout the city, and you could throw in 206 acres that we own on the golf course. That this is city-owned property, but this is things that this council is trying to think out of the box for solutions throughout the city. And when you just isolate housing out of all the other initiatives in the roadmap and every other way that we're moving the city forward, I got an email from a resident, and I love feedback from citizens. And if I have a citizen that feels like I disparaged them or I was not open to their comments, I apologize. That's not my intention. I would never do that, even when I don't agree with citizens, which happens occasionally, so several times a day. But I will always listen to them. But I think we're always out there talking about what we're doing. That's why we invited the citizens into our roadmap development, and we're talking about these things, what we're trying to do. But you can't take housing out of economic development or infrastructure. And what we're doing, our say the arts sewer plant and arts and master plan and all the other things that we're doing, and say, well, we do this is going to affect my home value, or it's going to it's going to devastate this city. You have to kind of look at what we're doing holistically. And again, I said it last meeting, I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. But again, when we do have a plan or something that we react to, we always invite citizens citizens input's always welcome when we can have it. So, but we have something concrete that we can, share with citizens to react to. We'll have a public hearing like we always do, and we'll listen and respond. But I think we're trying to do something new that hasn't been done, and I'm proud that we're trying to do that. And then we'll do it realistically, and we'll do it in the best way possible. So I'm excited about that. Ms. Wilson.
There's one just tiny point that I wanted to mention, that one of the people that spoke said, how many more are y'all going to do? As far as I know, we have no other property that we own, that the city owns, that we're planning to do any kind of housing on, the city is planning to develop. And isn't that correct?
Basically, what we've said is the city owns property and we're not using it for a particular purpose. We'll look at it, but really what the goal was with this particular site was it's next to 2 existing residential apartments. It's next to general commercial. It's not likely going to be a 2-acre estate. Let's see what we can come up with on this site. And if there are other developers who in the future have 2 acres and they would like to consider a similar concept, they could do so. What we've had come to the city has usually been 20 acres, 50 acres, 200 acres, 300 acres, and they're mass grading everything, and they want to know how many units can I fit in there and how much profit can I make. It's okay to have a site where you look at it and say, this one's not necessarily about profit. This is about meeting a niche that we haven't had filled.
Yeah. And even if we do come up with an amazing concept for 12 micro cottages that are just world-class design, and we'd all want to live there. We can all live together and just meet all the time. But
I'm out.
that is just one very small component of housing solutions. It's not the solution, you know. So it's just, you know, these are all just small components of overall solutions to, you know, to what we're trying to do. And again, it's not the solution. It's not the only solution. It's not like we're going to, you know, again, flood the city with affordable housing. That's our goal, or that we have signed on to some national program that was created by, you know, political parties. That's our goal to, you know, to change the makeup of our, you know, region and our area. That's just, you know, that's ludicrous. So we're here to do the best work for our citizens and provide them the solutions that they need. Best solutions, lowest possible cost. So, Mr. Tolan.
Thank you, Mayor. To put a little finer point on kind of timelines, we're expecting to hear back from Mr. Oliver and his company sometime in the month of October with a site plan, a suggested site plan.
This fall, yes, sir.
It's a suggested, you know, opportunity for us to develop that property. I understand from Mr. Patton there are some topographical challenges over there, so certainly 24 has never been mentioned. I've heard in the teens, so I would say that, you know, the low to mid-teens is probably more realistic. We'll see. And the other thing is, what else was I going to say? I guess that's it. It left me. It'll come back.
But I think the information provided is great, especially on that project where there's, you know, I get people just like on sanitation react to things that they think they know or heard from other people. But again, I think the more we can share that information, post it or whatever, the more we can get, you know, facts out there, the better off we can be. The more the citizens can be informed about what's actually happened, the better off we can all be. So,
with council's permission, I will send you an updated operations report tomorrow with the update on the traffic light at Teasley. But I will also include in it at the bottom all of this housing information that I've presented tonight.
That's great. That's excellent. Thank you very much. So.
One more clarification I wanted to make. We were able to move forward with this conceptual plan for this particular site because of ARPA funding. Is that correct?
Yes, we are using federal funds that were provided to us as part of the American Rescue Plan Act, and one of the funding categories in there was affordable housing, and so this is being used from those particular funds.
Thank you.
I have a different question.
Sure.
Do we,
please.
Do we know when we're going to open the parking deck?
We are trying to work on dates for ribbon cutting. The only thing that we're really waiting on at this time is the solar panels. The actual canopy is up, so the next piece after the canopy structure is in is getting the panels in. They were working on some wiring today. They have been working on pouring the footings for the actual EV charging pedestals that are on there. We feel comfortable the week of September 12th. That's the week that we're targeting, but I don't have an exact date for you. Soon, yes, ma'am.
Yay. It looks great. Really does.
It does.
You need to block off that entrance if you don't want anybody parking on that upper deck. I started to pull in there tonight.
Not until after I get out of there tonight, so I'm thinking. No,
But I didn't want to get in trouble, so I didn't. Wise man.
I have one thing to add.
Mr. Waterman?
Mr. Peppers, I have one request.
Yes, sir.
As I'm, you know, summarizing or scanning social media and in conversations with residents, it seems as though we, the council and mayor, government, the city in general, is not very transparent. A few comments were made here. Why am I just now hearing about this? Why were we not consulted? I feel we should be consulted. And granted, I've only been here 8 months on council, but I know that there are records, meeting minutes, the agendas are posted. This is being taped now and will be broadcast, show up on YouTube tomorrow morning. It seems pretty transparent, but maybe the residents don't really know about it. And is there something we can do to basically get that word out, that we are being transparent? It's all here. this particular topic, like any topic, has shown up on our agendas. We've had multiple public hearings, and sometimes the public hearings are open and closed because no one signs up. But then when council votes, or then it's an uproar. It's just like with sanitation, right? So I'm just wondering, is there something that we can do, maybe before we meet next time, that we can somehow get that word out a little bit better to the residents? What the options that are available to be kept up to date on what happens here, what's going to happen at our next meeting. I know because I've searched for it, but maybe so I just want to put that out there. Maybe we can do something about it, make it better.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Did have a resident call me yesterday and tell me she was never going to vote for me again because she missed my Sunday supper recipes and she wanted me to cook more. So, I thought I'd share that. A moment of levity. So, you get all kinds. So, okie dokie. We had no council introduced items added. I'm just checking, and I have nothing for this. Do you have an announcement at the end and not during the announcements? Go ahead.
Ms. Stanton, today is National Ginger Cat Day. Oh, we need to celebrate anyway.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.